We will go ahead and get started. Good morning, I'm Mitch Mitchell, Chair of the San Diego Housing Commission Board of Commissioners, and it is 9:05 a.m. on January 17th, 2025. I'm going to call to order today's regular meeting of the board. We are meeting in person this morning with commissioner staff and members of the public in attendance, and we have a quorum with 5 commissioners present. Video of today's meeting is being streamed live online, and if you want to watch it, it's the usual, www.sdhc.org. To accommodate additional members of the public who may wish to participate in today's meeting, we have set up an overflow room down the hall, and the live streaming of today's meeting will be shown in the overflow room as well. Speaker slips are available in the overflow room for those members of the public who wish to provide comments. Our staff will bring those speaker slips to me here at the appropriate time, and our staff will help escort the speakers from the overflow room to the appropriate place to make their comments. Members of the public here in the boardroom or in the overflow room who wish to provide comments need to remember they need to complete a speaker slip. And if you're in the boardroom, please submit your speaker slip to our Vice President of Communications, Scott Marshall, who's standing here on the side of the room. And if you are in the overflow room and you see a member of our communications staff, you can also give it to them. In a moment, I will be proposing that agenda item 100 be placed on the consent agenda for today's meeting. Members of the public may provide comments about the items on the consent agenda by submitting a speaker slip for that item before the board considers the consent agenda. Remember, to speak in favor of any item on today's agenda, please submit a gold-colored slip. To speak in opposition, please submit a pink speaker slip, and those who wish to address the board on a topic that is not on the agenda should fill out a white speaker slip. Members of the public will have 3 minutes each to provide their comments about agenda items or non-agenda public comments. However, if a large number of people wish to provide non-agenda public comments or speak on a single agenda item, comments will be limited to 1 minute each. Collective testimony by those who support or oppose an item should be limited to no more than 15 minutes total per side. So when I call your name, please step to the podium, state your name for the record, and begin making your comments. First on the agenda is the non-agenda public comments, and I think we do have a few. We have a couple of white speaker slips for that one. And let me call to the podium Hannah Halu. Hannah, please.
Good morning, Honorable Board Directors of San Diego Housing Commission. My name is Hannah Hailu Bayena, and I live in City Heights with my husband. I see my notes, what I have. Okay, and we are both disabled seniors. We had applied for Section 8 on November 19, 2012, and on November 19, 2021, we were told we were on a waiting list for MOD rehab for the elderly and disabled. Up to this point, we're still on the waiting list. I am here to request the board to grant us a priority based on our health situation. My husband is diabetic and hard walking, he can't walk very well. We climbed 29 stairs one way, and basically sometimes twice, and sometimes more. And recently, young people, immigrants, moved into our building, and they're just loud, and we just can't sleep. I'm sorry, I'm getting very emotional. I know they play music, I know they're young. And so I'm here to plead the board that they consider our situation and grant us a priority on the waiting list. And thank you for this opportunity, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ms. Halou. I appreciate. I think that well, obviously we'll have somebody, make sure we have all your information properly accounted for. And I don't know who at the back. Someone from. Oh, okay, yeah, there, I see it. Okay, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have Joni Halpern.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Joni Halpern. I'm consulting attorney with the Partnership for the Advancement of New Americans. I come here with a few notes for your consideration. First, I want to thank you for the staff that you have in this organization. Many, many times I've come to the staff for help, and I don't think I've ever had one single situation where the attitude hasn't been a desire to help. So I really appreciate that, because we deal with public agencies all the time, and we don't always get that so consistently. So thank you. I wanted to say that we had a situation that Mr. Davis gratefully, we're grateful that he helped us with, and Jennifer Bulskova, I think I got her name right. It involved a tenant receiving multiple erroneous notices to pay or quit. It was very frustrating, and he was very upset after months of this. But we could have resolved the problem much earlier if there had been a policy by the commission and its staff to issue receipts for any rent payments made at the window on the third floor. I know it's not the place where you're supposed to, but sometimes people do, and as a courtesy, your staff has accepted the payments, but we need receipts. And this would have made it easier to solve this problem a lot earlier. The second thing is, I know you can't make a law about this, but I think it would be helpful to encourage landlords that when they send letters of deficiencies or anything to tenants, that they at least date the letter. Because a lot of times problems fall into disputes months later, and the tenant has no idea of the chronological history of this event because the letters aren't dated. It's just good business practice, and I think if the commission noted this to landlords, they would be encouraged to do this. It's a simple solution. And finally, I hope I'm not too out of step with actual developments, but we haven't heard anything for a long time about Mariners Cove, so I wanted to bring two things to your attention. One, we have some evidence that the method of computing household income for subsidized tenants might be in error by these third-party administrators there, because we've received reports from several tenants that although their household size and incomes are different, their rent increase was the same. So we're a little bit asking, what is the cause of this? And what formula are they using? Because in the past, we've seen them making errors in not accounting for deductions, for example, in independent contractors and things like that. So I wanted to make sure I bring that to your attention. Second, we know you're concerned, as we are, with the progress of planning for Mariners Cove. But having heard nothing for several months, we wanted to remind you we're still worried, okay, that allowing the developer to escape the contractual obligation to invest $25 million in renovations in order to wait for more favorable market conditions for new development might force the negotiations in a direction that would undermine the Commission's efforts to maximize housing for low-income tenants, as well as your efforts, your hard-won efforts, to achieve robust relocation assistance. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that is all of the non-agenda public comment speaker slips that we have received. So I will now move on to commissioner comments. Commissioners, do any of you have any comments that you'd like to make? Commissioner Vasquez.
Although I try not to address specific comments, I just wanted to say that based off of the public comments we've had today, this is just an illustration, a daily illustration of how important affordable housing is, especially when you are growing older, it's supposed to be in your golden years. And my father, who's had several surgeries and amputations over the years, and who suffers from diabetes, I've had a similar experience where you get displaced when you're renting, and so finding housing that accommodates you as you grow old is important. And I know that this board cares about people at all different stages. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Commissioner Vasquez. I would agree.
I just had one comment.
Commissioner Jackson?
In regard to the rent increases. I thought it was across the board, everyone had the same. How is it that one person could have a different rent increase than another person? It's usually whatever.
I think this is related to the Mariners Cove.
Is that specific to
Yes.
one building?
Yeah, that's specific to one building. And although a rent increase for the actual total rent might be the same, the tenant portion might be different depending on household income.
Okay.
So there, one person might have a $100 increase, one household might have a $30 increase. Well, obviously, we need to look into what's going on, and I know Jeff and Joni have talked regularly, so we'll figure this out, Joni. And we have a compliance team that looks at those things, so we'll work on that.
And the last thing was, I'm trying to get an understanding of the rent being paid on the 3rd floor. What is that? Is that something specific to building a certain apartment or complexes that we have, or what is that?
Generally, that's not the practice, but if folks come in, my guess is we don't deny taking that. So if folks have made an effort to come in to pay their rent when there's actually another process that is normally done, then we're not going to say no. So, but I have notes to look into, like, that whole conversation around receipts. So we'll follow up.
Vice Chair Klempner.
Right before I ask Casey to come up, I just want to reiterate, it's great to hear about the service level of the staff, and I do think that this agency does a very good job of fostering a culture of service towards the wide variety of people who need our assistance. And I know that the hardest thing for staff is the lack of sufficient resources, that it's just a daily shortage of, we do not have what we need to assist everybody who legitimately needs the assistance. And I know that that's very difficult for staff, and I continue to be very appreciative that when people have a positive experience dealing with our staff, because the range, I mean, even just in the public comments today, the range of issues we deal with is so wide, from, business practices and private parties dating documents, and when and where receipts get issued and how rent gets calculated, to just the fundamental issue of that incredibly long wait list that I know kind of weighs on everybody in this agency. So with that said, Casey, can you give us our monthly?
Good morning, Commissioners. So I'm here to provide an update on shelter activities for the month of December and then year to date. So in the month of December, the Housing Commission received 1,964 requests for shelter, and we were able to accommodate 189, which was 10%, our lowest mark this year. The number one reason was because there was no male top bunks, number 2, no female top bunks, and then number 3, no male bottom bunks. So just a lack of available beds. We hope to see it increase in January. Obviously, December, we were really focused on transitioning the Golden Hall residents into new shelter beds that were made available. As you recall, we were able to bring on 263 new beds, and they were prioritized for Golden Hall. But we have some beds available from that effort, and so starting January 6th, we started bringing on new folks and opening up those new beds. So hopefully we'll see an increase in January. Year to date, we've received, so that's from July 1st, 11,795 unique referrals for shelter, and we've placed 1,461, or 12% of all requests. Number one reason we can't accommodate is, again, no male top. Number 2 is no male bottom, and then number 3 is no female bottom. And just noting here, for inclement weather, since we're in that season, we're halfway through when we've already reached 24 activations. We generally plan for 20 to 23 a year, and we've already met that halfway through. And it's an unprecedented year because it's all due to the temperature being too cold. And generally, if you recall, we generally activate because of rain or the combination of rain and temperature, but we haven't done one yet this year. It's just all been due to very low temperatures in the evening. So we'll have to monitor that closely, but we're already met our cap, so to speak.
How many, Casey? 20?
24 today we activated.
And what do we plan for?
We generally plan for between 20 to 23 based on our history, but we've definitely seen in the last couple of years it's consistently increasing. So
So we, last year we had to, because there was such heavy rainfall, we ended up having to add to those budgets to make that work. This is one of the Housing Commission, frankly, funds this out of local funds. So these are local fund Housing Commission dollars that fund the inclement weather programs. And at this rate, it's looking like we're going to have to double it. Is that correct?
yes, we will.
I've also been noticing, I get the emails when the inclement weather shelters are activated, and it does seem like it's been every other day, despite our rainless winter.
Yeah.
How does that impact the regular referral placements that you just summarized? Meaning, do we have fewer referrals when people are utilizing inclement shelter, or do they sort of operate separate from each other?
I actually would have to look at that. I'm not sure we've actually looked at the specific days we activate and then the number of referrals we receive. That's a very good question, but we do have the ability to look at that.
That would be very interesting,
Yeah.
especially if we're seeing an increase year over year in the number of days we have to. And then the second question that you may or may not have on hand is, I am curious. I was going to ask you before you read my mind and covered it. So when it's activated for temperature as opposed to rain or more severe conditions, do we see any difference in the number of people who are coming in and utilizing that? Depending on the conditions, or
I would say it's about the same.
About the same.
Right now, we're averaging about 56% utilization. Our smaller program is generally runs at 100% utilization, but the bigger, larger one that operated by Father Joe's has a lower utilization. I think because they have carve-outs like families, and it's more specific. So, but it's about the same.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. And is the cost of the inclement weather shelters, is it the same regardless of the utilization rate? Because we still have to have the same number of people there and the same, all that.
Yes. Yeah, they're paid per activation.
Got it. And then is there any, I don't know how this would be, but is there any throughput from people who come into the inclement weather than accessing other resources or going into other shelters, or?
So the staff definitely take the opportunity to talk about shelter and other resources because they have those hours with them in the evenings, and they serve dinner. So there's definitely time to engage and kind of do in-reach to different programs. So those conversations are definitely happening. I would say there's generally a handful of folks that end up, wanting to follow up and getting into a long-term shelter.
But when we don't have enough shelter beds,
Right.
Anyways, there's,
Little
Okay.
incentive, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Casey. All right, seeing no further comments from the Board of Commissioners, I just would add this. I want to echo the fact that, as I say to you all the time, that the staff of the Housing Commission, they're all doing a wonderful job. It's not an easy job. It's a tough job. But don't think that there's ever a day that you go underappreciated by any member of the Board of Commissioners. And it's not always easy, but you somehow manage to do it with a smile. So thank you very much. I would close with this, that we're starting the year 2025. The challenge is still clear, and Vice Chair Klumper was mentioning that it's been a dry winter, the driest winter to date, according to the National Weather Service. October 1 to January 8, the driest winter is dating back to 1850. So there hasn't been any rain. but it's been cold. And so we have to prepare for the next phase of winter. And if it's cold and wet, all of the inclement weather shelters are going to be really, really important. So, and again, it's about getting people into shelter and protected. This for me, this year, Lisa and I've talked a lot about this, is amidst the backdrop of we have an infrastructure struggle to get people off the streets and into homes and into shelters. I'm actually hopeful that we will make great progress. I know that we have a lot planned between now and July that we're bringing online, and that's the good thing. I know that we have a lot of conversations. Commissioner Cushman and I have had some conversations about Veteran Village, some of the components. I think that between now and July, the hope that I have is that we fuel the belief in the public that we are indeed taking the actions and the steps necessary to try and better protect people and address this crisis. This is a joint effort, and I think that everybody needs to remember, and you've heard me say this before, it's not just about the San Diego Housing Commission and the incredible team here, this Board of Commissioners. It's about it's about 18 cities in the county coming together to figure out how to best address this crisis, and I think that's important. So with that, no further comments. We will go to Lisa Jones, our CEO, for her CEO report.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. We've been talking a lot about what this year holds, and there's actually been some things going on in the press as well about some of the challenges we're already sort of figuring out how to navigate and manage. So we wanted to talk a little bit about that today. So as you know, budget preparation and planning for the city and the Housing Commission, along with many other government agencies at all levels, is going to be especially challenging this year. Uncertainty about available funding and anticipated reductions require difficult discussions and decision-making, and we appreciate the value and the guidance that this board is going to bring this year. It's going to be some critical conversations that need to be had here and with our housing authority and with our city and our mayor. As I've shared with you individually, we have already started our budget process ourselves. Recent news coverage has highlighted one area of our budget that is significantly impacted, our project-based vouchers program. However, some of this coverage, unfortunately, has given an inaccurate impression of what is taking place. And it has impacted our call centers, our participants, and our landlord calling and asking if our voucher program is ending. I have to say to the reporters and the reports that came through, the content was accurate, but when people read a headline or people only have, capture part of the conversation, it can be really misleading and very unsettling and destabilizing for folks. So the reporting itself was accurate. Some of the headlines came across, as is often the case, were a little misleading and scared some of our voucher participants, thinking that their resource or rental subsidy would be ending in the coming days. So I just wanted to assure everyone, you and especially the public in attendance today or watching from home, that the Housing Commission has not ended and is not ending any of our rental housing voucher programs. We are continuing to assist more than 17,000 families by paying a portion of their rent each month. These families consist of more than 36,000 people with low income or who have previously experienced homelessness. And we provide this assistance through a variety of types of housing vouchers. Next slide, please. As you are aware, project-based vouchers, or PBVs, are awarded to affordable housing developments through a competitive application process. When we award project-based vouchers, they are linked to specific housing units. And I say this as much for our public as for this board, because you approve these projects, you know what this is, but it's really important for the public to understand. These contract terms are long-term commitments, generally for about 20 years, and in most cases, toward the end of that contract term, a new contract term is negotiated to keep that housing affordable. So our commitment to the rental subsidy for these PBV units is long-term, even if the costs of doing business and rental subsidies rise. Because these are long-term contracts, when a family moves on, the project-based voucher remains with the housing unit to assist the next family that moves into it. We have committed more than 3,700 project-based vouchers, which represent about 22% of our total voucher allocation. About 78% of our project-based vouchers are for families who have previously experienced homelessness, and 22% are for families with low income who have not previously experienced homelessness. About 45% of our PBV commitments have occurred in just the past 5 years. With the support of the City Council and this Board of Commissioners, we have been authorized to award more than 1,700 vouchers under the project-based model since 2020. These include project-based vouchers that were essential to securing state home key funds for San Diego. Our collaborations with the city and the county have brought more than $105 million in state home key funds to San Diego to create more than 600 affordable housing units for people previously experiencing homelessness. And some of those programs will be coming on this spring, just as you have said, Chair Mitchell. These are resources that would have gone to other areas of the state if we had not been able to collaborate to secure them for our region and to find match funding to match the dollars that were coming into the state. Critical component of being able to bring in state and federal dollars is to have local match. Project-based housing vouchers were a crucial part of these efforts. Families in housing units with project-based vouchers will continue to receive rental assistance from the Housing Commission. I'm just going to say that again. Families in housing units with project-based vouchers will continue to receive rental assistance from the Housing Commission. That is not ending. However, due to financial constraints, the Housing Commission will not be awarding new PBVs at this time. We have been a leader in the region and, frankly, in the state in awarding PBVs to spur the development of affordable housing and permanent supportive housing especially, and PBVs are a crucial way to get that done. The need to stop awarding these new PBVs is unfortunate, but it is also unavoidable. It is a step we need to take as we continue to assist thousands of families with low income who currently rely on our existing housing vouchers. Next slide. I have shared with you before that the cost to provide rental assistance for families with low income continues to rise in the high-cost housing market in San Diego. This graph shows that the average rent subsidy for our housing vouchers has increased 57% since fiscal year 2020. 57% since then. If we want to know what our rental market is doing, our housing subsidy can tell us. Unfortunately, federal funding is not keeping up with this growth in expenditures at the same rate. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, funds our housing vouchers. We receive one pool of federal funding for all rental housing vouchers we administer. HUD informs us each year how much we can expect to receive for rental assistance payments. That amount is based on the calendar year, so it is generally effective January 1st. Based on the information we are receiving from HUD, we are projecting that our rental assistance payments will continue to exceed federal funding throughout this year and into next year. Essentially, it will cost more to run our program than we are receiving from HUD to fund it. The notice we received from HUD, effective January 1st, 2025, indicates that funding for our housing vouchers will decrease for the remainder of 2025. It is also important to keep in mind that these funding amounts are not final as long as the federal government continues to operate under continuing resolutions. So they are essentially an estimate from HUD. It is also important to keep in mind, I think I've said that right, as long as, yes, the funding cuts we're projecting could become greater. One of the challenges we encounter each year is that we may not receive our final budget authority amount from HUD until 5 or 6 months into the calendar year. Last year, we did not receive our final funding amount from HUD until about mid-May 2024, even though it was effective January 1st, 2024. Because of that, this can create more uncertainty. We know the financial limitations we're facing are going to be worse than in recent years, but we do not yet exactly know how bad the situation could be. To provide some additional context, in fiscal year 2024, the amount we expended on our rental assistance payments was more than the amount we received from HUD for that program. As I said before, we are critically focused on making sure that we continue to fund the families on our program today and to continue to support the incredible staff that do that work. We know the need for rental assistance in our community is already much greater than what we are able to provide with the HUD funding we receive. And Commissioner Klumner, sorry. You mentioned that earlier, I think, when you talked about our wait list. Right? We know, and this is true for other communities across the country as well, and especially in the state of California, as we're one of the highest rental markets in the country. Now we are faced with the reality that the limited funding we receive will likely be reduced this year and potentially into the following year. The people shown on this slide are among the many families our project-based housing vouchers have assisted in recent years. We know the positive impact these vouchers have as they support housing for those struggling financially, struggling as they age, and in other ways throughout our community. And we provide homes for those who have experienced homelessness and ensure quality new affordable housing stock comes to our city through the project-based voucher program. But with so many families currently relying on us, we had no choice but to stop awarding new project-based housing vouchers at this time. We are working diligently on the development of our budget to determine how we can best provide housing assistance for families who need it, while also prudently accounting for upcoming fiscal challenges and project-based voucher commitments that extend through the end of 2028. We have just over 960 project-based vouchers in our pipeline, so there is a positive. We have PBVs in our pipeline. We will have more units coming online to serve people. We just can't commit anymore at those times because we have to make sure that when those project-based voucher communities come forward, they can cash the checks, the commitments that we've written to them. We will continue to keep you informed as we work through these issues, and happy to have a discussion or any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Commissioner Cushman.
What was the delta in 2024 from what we received?
I believe it ended up being about 3 or 5 million. Is Suket here? Do we have Suket? Suket, what was the delta for 2024 fiscal year? I think it was 275 to like 82. I'm trying to remember exactly.
Overall, for all programs, it was about $7 million for all programs. For voucher itself, it was about $3 million. Out of the 250 million, whatever. Correct.
Yeah. 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 That was at a 99.5% proration, which is basically HUD says, this is how much you need. We're going to give you 99.5% of what you need. It's fairly common. Our current sort of get ready letter that we have from HUD effective January 1st, even though it's not the final, is at 97.5. So that's a 2% cut already. And when you're spending $280 million, that's a big cut.
All right. Thank you very much. Any further comments, questions? All right. Lisa, obviously, we've talked about this, the importance of making sure that there's clarity on the voucher situation at all levels. I think the federal level, like the delegation, so I know Lisa's working on that. We've talked about clarity both at the county and the city levels. Because, you know, again, I agree with you that people read the headline and questions came in of no more vouchers. And you said, what we know is 960 units for certain are coming online and they have vouchers attached to them. Beyond that, it's up in the air. Okay. All right. Next up on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for the November 22nd, 2024 meeting. And there aren't any speaker slips related to so it's the approval of the November 22nd, 2024 meeting, the regular meeting of the board, and the December 18th, 2024 special meeting of the board. No speaker slips have been submitted regarding the minutes. So commissioners, any changes to the minutes, or can I entertain it? Will someone entertain a motion? Motion by Commissioner Jackson. Second by Commissioner Klumpner. No comments or corrections. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Okay, any opposed? Seeing none, the motion passes unanimously. Now we'll move on to the consent agenda. As I said at the start of today's meeting, I'm proposing that item 100 be put on the consent agenda. That item is the authorization of a drainage easement at the Valley Vista Apartments. No speaker slips have been submitted for this item, so this concludes the public comment period for item 100. Commissioners, any comments or questions on the consent or comments on the consent agenda, or do we have a motion? So motion by Commissioner Cushman, second by Commissioner Jackson, and no further comments. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, that motion carries unanimously. The consent agenda is deemed approved. Next up is item 101, and this is the application for the state of California for the Cal Home Program funds. We will take public comments after the staff presentation. And I think, Sujata, we have you, and that's it. Yeah, Sujata Raman is going to present. I'm so used to looking up and seeing two people, I always have to look back down. So Sujata, welcome. It's nice to see you smiling at the beginning of the year. Just remember that's important. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good morning, Chair, Commissioners, Lisa, and others. I'm Sujata Raman, the Vice President of Single Family Housing Finance for the San Diego Housing Commission's Real Estate Department. The item before you today is a request recommending the Housing Commission approve the submission of an application up to $5 million in Cal Home Program funding from the California Department of Housing and Community Development, also known as HCD.
It wouldn't be the start of the year if we didn't, all right, we're good.
Okay,
Now we're good.
thank you. HCD issued a Notice of Funding Availability, NOFA, on December 12th, 2024. Applications are due March 13th, 2025, and the Housing Commission intends to apply for the maximum allocation of $5 million in Cal Home state funds. Funding under this Cal Home Award will be deployed through the Housing Commission's existing first-time homebuyer program to eligible households earning up to 80% of area median income. This is currently $121,250 for a family of 4. Eligible households through this program receive a 3% simple interest deferred payment loan of up to 25% of the purchase price, not to exceed $125,000. To be eligible, the property must be located in the city of San Diego, and the borrowers must meet the Housing Commission's eligibility and underwriting guidelines. The down payment assistance loan that we offer is fully deferred with no payments due until the 30-year maturity date, or if the borrower sells or rents the property. Along with the down payment assistance loan, we also offer a closing cost grant up to $10,000 to help first-time home buyers purchase a home. If awarded, some funding would also be deployed through the Housing Commission's existing ADU finance program to eligible households earning up to 150% of San Diego's area median income. Eligible households receive a construction to permanent loan of up to $250,000. To be eligible, the property must be located in the city of San Diego, and the borrowers must meet the Housing Commission's eligibility and underwriting guidelines. The ADUs that are constructed through this program are deed restricted for 7 years, during which the unit can only be rented to households earning up to 80% of area median income. An award of $5 million would benefit approximately 30 low-income and moderate-income families with either down payment assistance for the purchase of a home or a loan to build an ADU. Upon payoff, the principal and interest received is recycled back to the first-time homebuyer program and redeployed to assist additional households. Since 2001, the Housing Commission has received 8 Cal Home Awards totaling approximately $12 million, which has assisted 212 low-income households purchase their first home in the city of San Diego. With Cal Home loan repayments, the Housing Commission has assisted an additional 41 households, providing them with about $2.5 million in first-time homebuyer assistance. In summary, staff requests that the Housing Commission take the actions detailed in the staff report and shown on these next 2 slides. That concludes my presentation, and I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Sujata, appreciate it. One question out of the gate. You said in the presentation since 2001, we've received a little over 12 million. When was the last, when was our last award?
2020.
Oh, 2020, okay. And then between 2001 and 2020, or how much did we receive in 2020?
$4.4 million.
Okay. And then the 8 million prior to that was most of it received in any given year?
No, prior to that we had about 4 NOFAs in the early 2000s that we applied and received about $8 to $9 million, yes. And they were spread over 3 other NOFAs.
Okay, so we were awarded money over 4 different NOFAs. 4 different NOFAs,
yes.
Between 2001 and 2020.
Correct.
Okay. All right. And this is based on, the awarding from the state is supposedly based on the housing market or in housing cost of living market or environment, and that's the competition as the state looks at through that lens? Yeah,
there's scoring categories, and there are a few reasons we've not received an award in the last couple of years. One of the main reasons is that, frankly, the NOFAs are completely oversubscribed. For example, in 21, the NOFA that they put out was for $170 million, and the applications from different cities throughout the state totaled $261 million, a 53% more request and funding than's available. So they're very oversubscribed. And then, yes, there are scoring categories that we have no control over. They're based on census tract data set by the house, by HCD.
So it's just kind of interesting, going back to what Lisa's presentation on PBVs and the rent increase since 2020 is 57%. I would find it hard to believe that there are a lot of areas that are more challenging than ours in the state. But help me understand, because again, since 2020, that's the last award.
Mm-hmm.
Here we're starting 2025.
Again, one of the reasons is there are 200 applications and only 50 awardees each NOFA round that HCD puts out. And even if the amount that they put out seems high, for example, this year it's $176 million, there are a lot of subcategories. So there are set-asides for tribal entities to apply, for rural areas to apply, for manufactured homes. And then there's also a geographic distribution of the NOFA. So Southern California gets a portion, Northern California gets a portion, and Southern California this year is only $46 million out of the $170 million NOFA.
Okay.
So the Housing Commission is competing for a very small pot of money at the end of the day.
Okay,
It sounds like it's very unlikely that anybody's going to get it year after year after year because it's so oversubscribed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
Well, and I think the key you just said is of the 170, 46 million is for Southern California.
Right.
And in light of the devastation that we've witnessed over the last week and a half, 2 weeks, I would think there's going to be a natural draw.
I think so. In fact, HCD postponed the application due date just a day ago to give the LA City and LA County and those jurisdictions more time to apply for the NOFA.
Yeah.
So sadly, with the fires now, I'm not sure how competitive our application's going to be.
Yeah, okay. That was important to clarify. That's fair. That's fair. Okay, I don't have any further questions. Any other? Sujata, thanks for the explanation.
Thank you.
All right.
It does point out, though, Rich, that once again, Southern California and San Diego, we get the smallest percentage.
Yeah.
Look at the percentage that we're going to get as Southern California.
Yeah, 46 of the 170. There's no rhyme or reason to it, in my opinion, but it's what always happens. I agree. I agree.
With so many counties in big counties, LA counties, San Diego County, Riverside, about 6 counties are only going to get potentially $46 million.
Well, and I think that this is a comment that we and Lisa and I have this conversation. I know Mr. C would agree. This is where the region has to come together and be more vocal. Every city, our state delegation, because the fastest growing areas in the state are in Southern California, and so, the people who could make the argument, Riverside County is growing faster than anybody else. The fact that only 46 million of the 170 is coming here, should be a concern for everybody, because I think the challenge and the struggle is greater in the Southern California region. So we have to do better. I just think that we need some more help in voicing our concern about the mix.
I think especially when you consider that the cost of living and the cost of housing in particular is high, but our AMI levels are not.
Yes.
Right.
Exactly.
So there's a wider swing between our AMI levels and our housing costs than in other areas of the state, and certainly in other areas of the country.
Okay. Thank you, Sujata. All right. No public comments. Speaker slips have been submitted for item 101, so commissioners, there are no further comments. A motion by Commissioner Cushman, second by Commissioner Jackson. Any further comments? Seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No abstentions. The motion carries unanimously, and item 101 is approved. All right. That is the end of the regular agenda. So the board will now be meeting in closed session today. Mr. Christensen, will you please announce the closed session agenda, and then I will go to speaker slips.
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. The Housing Commission will now meet in closed session to discuss its closed session agenda, which is item Roman numeral 4A, That's the case of San Diego Housing Commission versus Surf Cowboy Elm LLC et al.
Thank you. Mr. Christensen, we have one speaker slip for today's closed session agenda.
Mr. Jackson, Mr. Klumpner, Mr. Mitchell, Ms. Jones, Mr. Christensen, Mr. Vasquez, and Mr. Cushman. My name is Sean Keener. I don't have good writing, but I
didn't have my glasses on,
That's
Sean, so
okay,
I apologize. I was
yeah,
trying to read
that's
it with
okay.
Keener.
I'm a regenerative farmer from the Pacific Northwest, and I was part of the team, and am part of the team, that purchased the building at 410 Elm Street that I believe you're going to be meeting with shortly in the closed session. And, you know, I've watched your meeting, and I want to let you know that even though it says versus there, I'm on your side. Since we understood the ordinance, which would have been July of 2023, when we finally connected with Mr. Spaeth and Mr. Christensen, we have been complying to the best of our abilities. We've worked with Nader and Wendy for the better part of 15 months, hired a consulting firm, gone through 3 project managers, and I think these are numbers from Nader's spreadsheet. We have 25 of 38 have been paid their SRO relocation fees. We have 3 tenants left in the building that I think like the building a lot better now that we're the owners of it, and just want to figure out a way to resolve this and not make it versus, but you know, we're about people too. So those were the extent of my comments. There's obviously a lot of detail that Nader and Wendy can educate. I think they're going into it. They can educate. I have a kind of a little bit more from us that I'd like to hand to you if I'm allowed to. Otherwise,
That's fine. Scott Marshall will take it from you, and then we'll go from there.
Cool. So thank you all, and it's fun to learn about what's going on here. So
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Keener. We appreciate it.
Cheers. And also, I want to concur, since I have 55 seconds, with Ms. Halpern's comments about the friendliness and openness of working with the staff at San Diego Housing Commission. So
appreciate
just on board with that.
I appreciate that. I'm always amazed too, because they have to put up with, in particular, me. So, but I always appreciate the fact they still managed to come up with a few smiles. So thank you very much, Mr. Keener.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
All right, that. All right, this is Mitch Mitchell, Chair of the San Diego Housing Commission Board of Commissioners, and the board has concluded its closed session and is reconvening in open session at 10:10 a.m. Housing Commission General Counsel Chuck Christensen will now announce the actions the board took in closed session. Chuck?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. The Housing Commission met in closed session and gave direction to council by a vote of 5-0 with no abstentions. That concludes the matters that were discussed in closed session.
Thank you very much, Chuck. And with that, this concludes the board meeting for today, and the meeting is adjourned at 10:10 a.m. Thank you very much to my fellow commissioners. Bye.